Again, I think it's so important for everyone to understand, like, you are in 100% control of that, right?
Hmm.
Like, your inner state is up to you, and it's not easy, right? It is one of the most
Yeah.
challenging things to really to be accountable for. But
Yeah.
we were talking earlier before we started recording, and I was saying how I took some time off the podcast because I just felt like it was forcing me to hyper focus on things that weren't giving me peace. So
Hmm.
it's being able to recognize those things without judgment or blame, and then just kind of navigate around that to get to the state that you want to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, like, when you say like that state of inner peace is the goal,
Hmm.
it's also okay if something like slips you out of that
Right.
and like you're not there for a little bit. I like there's a lot of people who follow these tenets that make it such a like a forced thing. Like, you be positive, be positive, be positive, be positive, be positive. Like, I don't think that's the way. And like, I feel like the positive mind is like the lofty goal that takes so much time that you should never assume that you arrived, but should always be striving to move closer to
Hmm.
every year of your life. So like, if I was trying to be like the greatest concert pianist in the world, I wouldn't assume that, like, even if I'm really great at the piano, I wouldn't assume that like I can get there in a month.
Hmm.
Like, it's like years of like practice and polishing how you do that. I see the positive mind as the same thing. Like, you can like, there will be people who and I mean, everybody follows somebody, but like the people I follow, like, I believe that they're speaking from truth,
Hmm.
and like, it's so easy for them that they speak it to other people in a way that sounds really easy without explaining, like, well, I'm a concert pianist and you're just starting to play the piano, so like maybe you can't just like move into where I am like or super quickly, but that doesn't mean that you can't. So
Hmm.
like, it's okay, like, to know that you you still struggle with it a little bit, or there are situations that can knock you off balance, or like there are like or they're like, for example, like, I don't think somebody can like be in the positive peaceful mind if they have like trauma in their past that they have to heal first. Even
Hmm.
if they're like, yeah, I'm gonna be positive, like, it's more than that. Like, and it's okay, like, to take time to sort this before you're like, okay, I'm gonna like, even
Hmm.
though it's like, even though you can always be positive, like, don't ignore your emotions, because like, the way you clean up your emotions is by feeling them, not saying like, nope, happy, 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 happy.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. It's like it's respecting the emotion, and again, not like not not judging it in the way that like anger is bad or sadness is
Hmm.
bad, right? Like, these things are just part
Hmm.
of the human experience. So allowing that, feeling it, and then releasing it. And it's so interesting because there's so many books on this where you have this emotion and we are taught that these emotions are bad from the youngest age, right? Like, it is,
Hmm.
you can't be angry, you can't have a temper tantrum. Like, these are emotions that you are not allowed to have. So as an adult, you subconsciously start to store them and you start getting sick, or you start like being depressed or being anxious, and all of these things start showing that you don't want. And simply from what people are calling trauma, which is just unreleased energy, right?
Yeah,
From
unreleased emotion.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you, I don't know, how do you rewrite that script? Because there is a lot of shame that when it comes to those feelings, right? Like, a lot of people don't want to
Hmm.
talk to other people or admit, um, and especially when it comes, what, like, I guess you would say, like, self-righteous anger or self-righteous depression, right? Like, it's if you're focused outward instead of internally, like those locus of
Hmm.
control. I think it's so empowering, and it's not to take away from whatever has happened to anyone. And I think that's what people think, and they get very defensive about it, and that's not what it is, right? And saying, no, the empowerment comes from knowing that you are in the driver's seat, and this awful thing happened to you, no matter what it is. But you have the power and the capability to feel it and let it go, and then have the life that you actually want, instead of holding on to this thing that's not serving you anymore.
100%.
And I was listening to this podcast, and so I sometimes end up in those feeds, the spiritual feeds on TikTok
Hmm.
and Instagram, because it's all the algorithm. So if you watch too many, it's all you see, and you'll
Hmm.
see these people. that are talking about trauma and trauma. And I'm like, everything is a trauma now. And like, if everything's a trauma, then nothing's a trauma. And we have so many people that just aren't, I don't know, like not capable of dealing with the normal aspects of being human. Like, you're going to have a heartbreak, you're going to have to deal with someone's death in your life, and those things freaking suck, but they're not traumas. I think to label that way, I would always irk me. But then I was listening to this podcast, and they were like, the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So whether it's someone dinged up your car, or whether it's that a loved one died, it doesn't matter, because that's the
or something
worst.
more serious,
right?
Like abuse or
Right. Yeah. So that's the worst thing that's happened to you. So it's all a matter of perspective. And I was like, well, I guess that makes sense then. And then I caught myself being a little bit judgy.
Yeah, I think maybe the word you use to label something that's deeper is not as important, but I think that so what humans do when there's a lot of pain is they find a way to cope with it in as easy in a road that's as easy as possible. And most of the time when it's traumatic, and you don't have to say like which kind of event, but when it's traumatic, what most people do is disassociate in some way, shape, or form. So like, could be numbing, could be like whatever like I don't even want to like list them all, but like what happens when you do that is that you don't process the emotion and it gets stuck. And if an emotion is stuck but you're dissociated with it, you're not going to know.
Right.
You're going to think that nothing's wrong. Like, oh, I'm happy. Like, oh, I had a happy childhood. Or like, yeah, like I haven't like, but like it's not true. And you'll see like with like people that have like been through really hard stuff, like not remembering it or understanding it or even including it in as part of their life story, because and it's not at a conscious level, it's subconscious, because it's too difficult. And if you're doing that, then that positive, peaceful mind objective is almost unattainable until you go back and deal with it. So that's what I think trauma is. And I do think everybody has, like, if you stop thinking about it in terms of like, oh, I was like, or like some of the worst things that can happen to you as a child, and you just think about it in terms of like pain that you didn't process, that's still there and you are convinced is not, that's what trauma is to me. And I like just my pandemic experience was about that, and I understand it so much better than I would have when we last spoke. Like, you can think everything's fine, and it's not. And I will never like it, it's almost like I'm not like I decided like I'm like I feel like I'm in a pretty good place right now, but like I'm never gonna allow myself to think that I'm done healing or changing or learning, because that's the most dangerous place to be, where you're like, no, I'm done, like I'm healed, now I'm going to teach others, now I'm like I resolved my life, like, and I figured life out. I don't think you do if you're still human, and there's always something you might not be paying attention to, and you don't have to figure it out today, but like just be open to that, you know.
No, totally. I think that's one of the main purposes of the podcast, right? Is just to remain curious and ask questions and have all sorts of different people on, because you get to learn from their expertise, right? Because there's only so much you can do in one lifetime. But if you have all of these conversations, then you're kind of getting to like piggyback off of that. I totally agree. I think the most dangerous spot to be in is like, I've got it all figured out and I have nothing to learn from anyone or anything. And like, this is the way that it is. Cause I feel like you just stop, you're stunted there forever. And then it's like, you're missing out on so many opportunities that way.